Hi, thank you for joining me here. We're going to go over the 21 questions for Detective Gummert. These questions were filled out and sent to Detective Gummert back in 2016. And on May 10, 2016, Detective Gummert sent an email response to the 21 questions. And these 21 questions, from what we were hoping, was going to help us understand why the police thought that David Crowley was guilty. I also want everybody to keep Detective Gummert in your prayers. I think he's out on a medical leave right now. Pray for his safety, because he has been willing to talk to us, and he has been honest even when he was wrong. He admitted that he was wrong. He wasn't trying to hide anything when he told Dan Hennon something different than what he told me about speaking with Kamel's father. And you'll see that here in this article, this brief article that I wrote back in 2017. And I think a lot of this will end up making it into my book here. So let's go through some of this here. Police went to the Crowley residence at 1:04 p.m. on January 17, 2015. Now, the scene was cleared at 5:09 p.m. that same day. After assessing the scene, that's when Detective Gummert believed David Crowley was guilty of a double murder-suicide. Now, police declined to provide us with hundreds of crime scene images. According to Detective Gummert, there were no police reports withheld from the 94 pages. Now, Jim Gummert first claimed that he never spoke with Kamel's father, which turned out to be a lie. And I do believe, I'm still not sure if I really believe that that was a lie or if he misspoke. Whatever it was, I'm still kind of open to that. But the fact is that it was not true what he told me. So at the time that I wrote this, I did believe that it was a lie. Now, Detective Gummert also stated that the Department of Homeland Security was not involved in this investigation, and neither was the FBI. Well, both Sean Wright and Mason Hendricks told me the complete opposite. So I'm going to go with what Detective Gummert told me over these guys. Now, asked if he saw this bullet hole in the living room ceiling on January 17th, Detective Gummert answered that I saw it, unknown of exact date. Alright, so we'll go that. There's that, I guess. Unknown of exact date. Now, here's the question. Was Chris Klein making it up? Was he mistaken when he told police that he was in the Crowley house on January 19th with Dan Crowley Sr. and Dan Crowley Jr.? Dan Crowley Sr. told police he wasn't in the house with Chris Klein on that date. I asked Detective Gummert if he knew who was telling the truth and who was not, and his response was no. Now, Mr. Gummert believed it was possible that Kamel was shot before Rania. Rania's flesh and blood was not found anywhere on Kamel's body, which is very odd. Asked if there were any latent fingerprints on the blood-smeared wall, this detective simply replied no. And we're going to get a lot of that because the questions were written so that it wouldn't waste his time, and so that he would just be able to almost give a yes or no answer, which in some cases he did, and in other cases he went on a little more. So, body parts were missing from the scene. They were not found elsewhere inside of this house. They were simply missing, and Gummert implied that the dog ate the missing body parts. That's very, very crucial. Very crucial to note. Okay, so here we go. We sent this off on 3/16/2016. It was returned on 5/10/2016. It should be noted that before the case closed, I had asked Detective Gummert if I could ask him some questions, if he would be willing to answer some questions, and he said yes. When the case was closed, he turned around and said that they're not going to be answering any more questions. And I responded with great disappointment towards that. And I reminded him that he had given me his word that he was going to answer some questions. So he said, send me over those questions and I will answer them. So he's a man of his word. Okay, question number 1. What evidence did you find to prove David Crowley was guilty of a double murder-suicide? MNBCA analysis results. How long did it take to come to that conclusion? It took them several months to send back those results. Now, we've looked at those results, And I don't know about you, but they definitely do not prove that David Crowley is guilty of a double murder-suicide. It is just not there. Let's move on to question number 2. So that was the main question. That was really the only, if I had one question to ask Detective Gummert, that was going to be it. So those results, the answer was very disappointing because at that time we did not have the Minnesota BCA analysis results. And now that we do, we can clearly see that there's really no tie to David Crowley in those results. It's just, you know, they only connect him to 2. His fingerprint is only on 2, is on the pin found in the office bedroom, and I think one other print, but that was really the only one that they could conclusively tie to David Crowley, just a pin that might have written "Submit to Allah." So that was very disappointing to me. It's still very disappointing to me rereading that, and I guess we'll just we'll just move on from there. So number 2, several reports state body parts such as hands were missing. Can you clarify as to whether or not body parts were missing from the entire crime scene? According to Detective Bone, Rania's entire right arm and shoulder were missing from her arm socket. David's right hand was missing, so was most of his skull. A majority of Kamel's head was also missing, according to Detective Bone. Both of her hands were found to be missing. And he just answers, parts were missing from the scene. Question number 3, the murder weapon was found near David's left hand. Yet there are many pictures that clearly show David pointing a gun with his right hand. Do you believe David was right-handed or left-handed? And his answer was right-handed. Question number 4. Were there any latent fingerprints on the blood-smeared wall? Allahu Akbar. No. Okay, that's very curious too. Question number 5, images. Let's get rid of that. Sorry about that. Question number 5, images of the murder weapon were provided to Tom Lydon, Fox News 9 anchor, who I assume filled out the same disclosure form as I did. Yet I did not receive at least 3 images that Tom Lydon did, including the image of the murder weapon on the living room table. At that time, we had not even received that. Red blood footprints on the hardwood floor. Yeah. So that was interesting. We got those later on from the BCA. If I file another disclosure request for those specific images, will I receive the images requested? I would also request an image of the murder weapon where it was found, even a censored version. And he said, fill another one out with a specific request, and I will see what I can do. Okay, so I'll have to follow up on that, looking for specifically where the murder weapon was. Just a photo of the murder weapon on that carpet, on the living room carpet. Number 6, is it possible, based on the evidence found at the crime scene, that Kamel was shot first and Rania was not immediately shot after? He says, it is possible. Was Rania's blood or flesh found on Kamel's body? No. Number 7, early media reports suggest Daniel Crowley Jr. went to David's house on December 26 or December 27, 2014. However, in police reports it is clear Daniel Crowley Jr. stated that he was at his brother's house on December 28th. Was Daniel ever asked about the various dates as to when he went to the Crowley residence? And the answer is no. Number 8. Is it true that police went to the Crowley residence on 3 separate occasions, once after the bodies were discovered, a second time after a mushroom bullet was found discovered, and a third time on February 18, 2015? And the answer is yes. Just wanted that confirmed. Nothing that the police reports don't state. I just wanted him to just confirm it and just give a yes or no answer. Number 9. Was water found in any of the toilets in the Crowley residence? How did the family dog, Paleo, survive for 3 weeks? Yes. See answer to question number 2. And so question number 2, just to be clear, is that the body parts were missing from the scene. So, how did the dog survive for 3 weeks? the dog. Survived for 3 weeks on the missing body parts, on the parts that were missing from the scene. Kind of vague, but that's okay. It's a clear answer to me. They all believe that the dog ate all of these body parts, and that's how the dog survived for 3 weeks. I don't know about the water. It doesn't really address the water. So, number 10, Chris Klein, because his name was spelled 3 different ways in two different police reports. Do you know when a neighbor called the Apple Valley Police Department to report a suspicious person in the Crowley residence on January 19, 2015? And his answer is yes. That pisses me off so much because it was like, okay, well, I was hoping for a little bit more, but again, these are all meant to be yes or no answers, so that's my fault. Number 10 was just a total failure on my part. I feel like the question just did not translate the way that I wanted it to translate. What I was hoping to get is more information about what happened on January 19th, and Dan Hennon did some amazing work and was able to get all the documents that we needed that talk about the 911 call and everything that happened after. So thank you, Dan. All right, let's move to number 11. I don't know why that keeps happening there. Sorry about that. Number 11, the suspicious person was Chris Klein. How was Chris Klein identified as the suspicious person the neighbor was referring to? And his answer is unknown. So it's unknown how they were able to tie the suspicious person on January 19th to Chris Klein. And I think that's a huge, huge question. Huge question right there. And the fact that he says that it's unknown, to me, is not good. It's not good. It's the type of talk, something you would say kind of about a sensitive informant or something like that. And I'm not saying that that's what Chris Klein was. I don't believe that that's what he was, but it's very, very weird, this answer here. How could it be unknown? You could say, we can't discuss it, you know, it's private, blah, 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 but unknown to me is just like, you guys don't know? You're telling me you don't know how you connected Chris Klein to this? But whatever the unknown connection was, it actually worked because Chris Klein admitted to being the unknown person in there, the suspicious person. All right, number 12. Chris Klein stated that he was at the house with Daniel Crowley Sr. and Jr., even though the neighbor apparently only reported one suspicious person. And I think that was the key word in that 911 call, a suspicious person, or in the police report about the 911 call that Dan Hennon got. Dan Crowley Sr., said that he was not in the house with Chris Klein. And that's in the police reports, page 81. And I asked Gummert, do you know if it was ever discovered who was telling the truth and who was not? And he said no. He's the lead investigator in this. Does it matter? I guess maybe it doesn't matter to their investigation. Obviously, it's not relevant, but it should be. This is new information. The bullet here, the second bullet, is new information. I don't know. It's just very, very odd to me. Okay. Number 13. Are there images from 1/17/2015 that show a bullet hole near the living room light? And he said yes. Yes. So he's saying, just like, so now we have two police officers confirming that they believe that they have images showing that there was a bullet hole in the living room when authorities entered the house. Somehow they missed it, I guess. Okay. Number 14, did you see the bullet hole in the living room ceiling on January 17, 2015? And again, he said, I saw it, unknown of exact date. Very important. You saw it, unknown of exact date. You would probably know that, because if you weren't in the house on January 19th, when the suspicious person, if you weren't in the house on January 20th, when they found item 53, the bullet that was tied to Rania, if you weren't in the house on February 18th, when the other detectives or people return to the same crime scene to discover another bullet in the living room attic, or in, right above in the attic above their living room. How do you tie it to this? So that just really blew my mind. Like, how do you not know? If you weren't there and you didn't see it on January 17th, when did you see it? So, was the Department of Homeland Security or the FBI involved in your investigation, or were they conducting their own investigation? Not contacted, no investigation. Did you ever speak with Andrew alone? That's Gummert's father. He says no. Now we know that turned out to be yes. Because after he tells no, then he tells Dan Hennon yes. He was always in contact with him. Detective Gummert, there's no reason to tell us two separate things. Now, I think I learned about this right before the film crew for Eric Nelson's Sloppumentary. Right before the film crew came. I might have learned about it that day. And I do remember telling Robert Erickson, the guy who came out, who was in charge of filming me that day, I do remember telling him this, and he was like, his eyes kind of lit up, but they didn't want to follow up on that. They weren't interested in anything like that. No, it wasn't about that. Okay, number 17. Now I should just go back to number 16 for 1 second. I should make it clear that when I confronted Detective Gummert about why he told Dan and I two separate things, he just said he did admit that he was wrong and that he did always talk with Kamel's father. I don't know why he said no. I mean, this is why I wanted to make it so clear, yes and no, because that is a lie. That is a lie. It's not. If it's a mistake, it's a mistaken lie. Whatever. It's not true. Let's put it like that. It's not true. Number 16 is not true. Number 17. I received the 94-page PDF document full of police reports. Are there police reports that were excluded in the 94-page PDF? And he says no. I received 464. Number 18. I received 464 images from the AVPD after filling out their disclosure request form. How many images were possibly withheld? Hundreds? Thousands? Hundreds. Is it possible to get censored images that will help prove 3 bodies were found at the Crowley residence on 1/17/2015? And the answer is no. I understand why the answer was no. And the reason that I brought up number 19, which I kind of fought back and forth on, I wasn't really going to include this one, which I would have kind of included some other ones in there, but because there were so many questions about a hoax, if there were even people there, and this is back in 2016. I mean, this had been started from definitely 2015. That theory had been kind of floating out there, and with some people kind of looking into it, some people speculating on it, and other people who thought that it was fact. So it kind of created some interesting discussions, I will say. Okay. Let's see. So there's no chance to get a censored image of that. Number 20, is it possible to get the medical examiner report or BCA reports in addition to what has already been provided? He said you will have to contact them. And we did contact them, and yeah, got some good stuff there. So thank you for everybody who contacted them. Thank you for everybody who wanted to, who put in that drive to make sure that we did, and to make sure that we got these reports. Everybody who helped out with that, thank you very much. And everybody who's read them too. Everybody who's taken the time to actually read them and go through them. You're now part of this. All right, number 21. What did you find within hours after arriving at the crime scene that led you to believe David Crowley was guilty of a double murder-suicide? Assessment of scene. So he assesses the scene, and pretty much that's what shows him that David Crowley is guilty, even though they missed 2 bullets, and even though they hadn't tied any of the writings, anything in the house to David Crowley yet. Assessing the scene, it was rolled out onto a red carpet. David Crowley is guilty as soon as you walk in, right? Well, I don't know. I mean, we've all walked down that same red carpet with the same data, and it's not what I've found. And they go, well, he's a detective, right? These are guys, they're trained, they know to do all this. Well, are they trained to look up and see a bullet hole? Are they trained to make sure that they don't leave the house without a bullet? Are they trained not to assume so quickly? And the other point is, well, if they're trained, then they know better, and they see what I'm seeing, because I'm not trained. So they should be able to see what I'm seeing and a lot more, and that was not the case. So, in addition to answering the 21 questions, Detective Gummert took the time to explain his answers, which I do greatly appreciate. I really do. Mr. Fernandez, I understand my answers are short and to the point, but based on your questions, you have read all of our reports, and there is nothing more to add on my end. If we did not cover it in our reports, then we did not feel necessary to do so. I have come to the realization that there is nothing I can say or do that will ever satisfy the people that believe there is a cover-up and that the family was murdered by the government or agents acting on behalf of the government. I will also never be able to satisfy people's opinion that our department did a poor job investigating this incident, even though most, if not all, of those critics have never spent a day doing what we do. I am not sure where you fall in your opinions, but I would hope we could agree on one point, that the lives lost in that home have greatly affected their families. I think we owe it to their families to move on and let them live in peace. They have suffered enough, and continual discussion of this case serves no purpose. Moving forward, I will no longer answer any questions regarding this case. Time has come for our department to move on. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. Take care, Jim. Now, like I wrote here, I often think about all of the strange things surrounding this case. The murder weapon was found next to David's left hand, even though he fired a weapon with his right hand. Latent fingerprints were not found on the blood-smeared wall in the living room. Since the rear slider was open 1/4 an inch when police arrived at the Crowley house, I didn't expect them to tell the media there were no signs of forced entry so early during their investigation. My biggest issue with this investigation is the bullet hole in the living room ceiling. The bullet hole allegedly led to the bullet that killed David Crowley. David's body was found on January 17, 2015, but the bullet that killed him wasn't found in the Crowley house until February 18, 2015, 1 month later. It was only after speaking with David Crowley's friend, Chris Klein, that police eventually found the bullet in the attic above the living room ceiling. It was days after this murder when Mason Hendricks began searching in the Crowley home, looking for anything that would shed light on why David would kill his family and himself. Hendricks told me he found nothing that day, but he did see the bullet hole above his head in the living room while in the house with Klein. According to Detective Gummert, it was unknown how they determined Chris Klein was the suspicious person inside the Crowley house on January 19, 2015. Klein is in character on this stage, not because of who he is, but because of where he was on January 19th, what he saw inside the Crowley house, and who he was with. Though it's not clear yet if he saw the bullet in the attic, we know police did not see the bullet in the attic until February 18th, 1 month later. Even worse, after speaking with Klein and learning some valuable information about the bullet in the attic above the living room ceiling, police never followed up to see if Klein was telling the truth about being in the Crowley house with David's father. Dan Crowley Sr., David's father, told police he was not in the house with Chris Klein that day. So we know Chris Klein and Mason Hendricks claimed to have seen the bullet hole in the living room on January 19th. And Detective Gummert told me he also saw the bullet hole in the living room ceiling, but he is not sure if it was on January 17th. I saw it, unknown of exact date. Now, one of the most common questions related to the missing body parts inside the house is, what did the dog eat? Most of David's head was missing, along with his right hand. Not much was left of Kamel's skull either, and both of her hands were missing. Now, despite Mason Hendricks' claim that Ranya's body was not disturbed, the daughter's entire right arm was missing. These body parts were never found, according to Gummert, and this detective assumes that the missing body parts were eaten by the family dog Paleo. I always say Paleo. I don't know. Sorry. Now, Gummert believes the dog survived off of the missing body parts and the water from inside those toilets. 2 of the 3 toilet lids were left open in the house. Photographs taken by police show how little water was left in Ranya's bathroom toilet and the basement toilet. Basically, not that much drinking water. Now, Detective Gummert told me that neither the FBI nor the DHS were involved in their investigation, not contacted, no investigation. This contradicts what Mason Hendricks told me, as well as something mentioned to me by Sean Wright. Hendricks believed the reason why the investigation took so long was because the FBI and the DHS had to sign off on it. Sean Wright advised me to stay away from people asking questions about the case, like Dan Hinnon and Thomas Lapp, so I could avoid being put under a microscope by the DHS. Still, the biggest contradiction in this case came from Detective Gummert himself. "Did you ever speak with Anja Malam?" I asked. "No," Detective Gummert responded. Anja Malam is the father of Kamel Crowley. In a police report by Mr. Gummert, he made it seem like all communication between police department and the Alam family would go through Kamel's sister Sidra. And here's what Gummert wrote. "Sidra asked that I only contact her directly regarding the incident. She stated that her father is under a lot of stress due to what is going on with her mother, and she felt that it best that she be the go-between between us and her father. I advised Sidra that I would work with her on a daily basis to provide her updates, and that she could contact me if she had any questions or concerns about the investigation." However, when Dan Hinnon asked this detective if he ever spoke with Anja Malam, Gummert told him yes. Unfortunately, police reports do not elaborate on the growing list of questions. In fact, the Apple Valley Police Department has decided they are no longer going to be talking about this case. They are moving on. Case closed. Mr. Gummert believes we owe it to the family to stop asking questions about the alleged double murder-suicide, and his superiors concur. And then it goes into what he says moving forward. Now, a few days later, Mr. Gummert made sure to speak with independent researcher Dan Hinnon at the Apple Valley Police Department. Dan Hinnon went to the Apple Valley Police Department to pick up the contents of his second disclosure request about the alleged double murder-suicide. Dan was not expecting to meet with Detective Gummert that day, but the 2 men ended up speaking for about 20 minutes in the lobby of the police station. I'm glad that Detective Gummert took the time to speak with Dan, but why would he tell me he would not be answering questions about the case, then initiate a meet and greet with Dan Hinnon, offering to answer questions? More so, why would Detective Gummert give Dan and I 2 different answers to the same question about Mr. Alam? After reading the 94 pages of police reports provided by the Apple Valley Police Department, I assumed there were reports I had not read, and I was wrong. Investigators seemed so confident of their theory that I found it hard to believe I had read every police report related to this case. And this was before Judy Proxnow told me about the audio recordings which accompanied certain police reports. But again, Detective Gummert says, "You have read all of our reports, and there is nothing more to add on my end. If we did not cover it in our reports, then we did not feel it necessary to do so." Okay. Now, Gummert seemed convinced when he wrote, "I have come to the realization there is nothing I can do or say that will ever satisfy the people that believe there is a cover-up and the family was murdered by the government or agents acting on behalf of the government." And it always comes back to that. I mean, I get tired of that after a while. It's just, we always hear that over and over again. So, Here was a question. What exactly do you do, Mr. Gummert? Do you look up at the ceiling while you're standing in the living room of a crime scene? Do you remember what date you saw the bullet hole above your head, especially when that bullet hole is part of a crime scene? What do you do, Mr. Gummert? You asked me to move on because we owe it to the families to live in peace. An officer serves their purpose by providing a thorough investigation to the citizens within their jurisdiction. No purpose is served by concluding this was a double murder-suicide within hours of finding the bodies. Continual discussion coincides with transparency and truth. An officer should know that. Okay, now on June 2nd, 2016, I wrote back to Detective Gummert hoping to find out why he gave Dan Hennon and I two completely different answers to the same question. Hello, Mr. Gummert. Sorry to bother you. And I know you are not discussing the case anymore, but for the purpose of accuracy in writing my articles, I have to ask you to clarify question number 16, when I asked if you ever spoke with Mr. Anjem Alam, Kamel's father. In the answer you stated no, but Dan Hennon told me you told him yes. Can you please clear this up? Did you ever speak with Mr. Alam? The following day, Detective Gummert responded, my apologies, I answered the question incorrectly. I have spoken to Kamel's father on several occasions. Hopefully that clears it up. Have a good day. And then I wrote back, is there a reason why you answered incorrectly? He said, it was a mistake on my part, not trying to hide anything. And again, okay. I'll leave it at that. I'll let you all decide it from there. So thank you for joining me, and until next time.